In the chaos of World War II, where shells rain down and danger lurks in every shadow, one unsung hero fights a different battle, a field cook, armed with a knife and a makeshift stove, racing against time to feed 200 hungry soldiers, because in war, a hot meal can mean the difference between despair and hope.
You nod, steeling yourself for the journey ahead. As you step out of the field kitchen area, the weight of the Mermite containers pulls at your arms. The sounds of battle echo in the distance, a constant reminder of the war raging beyond the relative safety of the camp. Still, you focus on the path before you, determined to deliver the hot meal to the soldiers waiting at the front. The terrain is rough, the ground uneven and dotted with debris from previous skirmishes. Every step is a struggle to maintain balance, to keep the heavy containers from swinging and spilling their precious contents. You follow the path marked on a map, the X indicating where the platoon is positioned, your only guiding light in the chaos. The sun hangs high in the sky, though it offers little warmth against the persistent chill. As you make your way deeper into the battlefield, the sounds of conflict grow louder, the whistle of artillery shells and the crackle of gunfire forming an unsettling symphony. You duck instinctively at each new explosion, your heart racing, senses on high alert. Halfway to the destination, you pause to catch your breath, muscles screaming in protest under the strain. A small squad of soldiers passes by, one of them nodding in acknowledgement of your burden. You're not alone out here, even if it feels that way. When you finally reach the edge of the platoon's position, you are met by a grim-faced lieutenant who looks over the steaming containers with something like relief in his eyes. Right on time, he says, and gestures for you to follow him into the makeshift trenches where the men are dug in. The soldiers you serve look haggard, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, uniforms crusted with dirt and sweat. Yet as you open each Mermite container, the aroma of the stew, the sight of bread and coffee elicits smiles and murmurs of appreciation. They've been waiting for this, for any sign of comfort amidst the harshness of war. The gratitude they express is simple but sincere. "Thanks, buddy," one grizzled sergeant says, cuffing you lightly on the shoulder. "You're doing more than just feeding us, you know. You're keeping us going." As the last soldier receives his meal, you secure the now empty containers and prepare for the journey back to the camp. The prospect of returning to the frontline activity doesn't thrill you, but there's a certain satisfaction in having provided for the men out here. This, after all, is your contribution, as vital as any bullet or bomb in the grand scheme of things. Hunger knows no rank, no division, no nation. In the gray trenches of European forests, in the scorched sands of foreign deserts, your task remains the same, to sustain the spirits and bodies. With a last wave to the soldiers you're leaving behind, you begin the trek back to the field kitchen, where the familiar rhythms of wartime cooking await. Your heart beats with the knowledge that though you didn't choose this toil, it's a battle you're learning to fight with every meal prepared, every tray served, and every pot stirred. In the end, as your pace quickens, you only hope that tomorrow, you and the rest of the crew will be just as ready to serve again. After all, in this war of endurance and attrition, even cooks are soldiers in their own way. Colonel Bryant looks at each member, lingering slightly longer on the sergeant. The necessity of the moment seems to pass with the acknowledgement of a job well done, though nuanced, revealing the complexity of survival among soldiers in the field. He returns to his jeep, offering the smallest of nods, a sign of respect from one who doesn't distribute praise lightly. After the jeep drives away, the tension in the kitchen breaks. Laughter and chatter ensue, and the promise of new supplies lifts the crew's spirits immeasurably. The sergeant, uncharacteristically, pats you on the back. "Well done, everyone. Take a short break, but then back to prepping lunch. A new day begins now." As the morning sun rises slowly, its rays piercing the thin veil of clouds above, you realize how vital each soldier is. Field cook, frontline warrior, medic, each operating in sync, sustaining hope, sustaining life. When noon arrives, the promise of beef stew and biscuits is not just a menu, but a token of the collective resolve, a feast in waiting, stitched together from cooperation, strategy, and the simple joy of nourishment. Later, while stirring the pots in anticipation of lunch's first hungry heralds, the sergeant glances toward you. The colonel said commendable. Number crunchers don't impress easy, and yet, here we are, without a scrap wasted, still feeding our brothers. Keep at it, and don't let up. Day's not over yet. As their voices drift toward you, a cacophony of anticipation, gratitude, and expectant cheer, you realize being a field cook isn't just about the meals, the battered pots, or improvised stews. It's about being a part of something crucial, a necessary link in the parched chain of survival. Tomorrow promises no less challenge, but the burden seems lighter when carried upon familiar shoulders. Perhaps, as you turn toward the next chore, this life, this moment, is where you were meant to be, feeding aspirations instead of bellies, holding line and heart, the quiet, essential rhythm of survival on the march. For one more thing, the colonel adds, I'm assigning your unit to train other kitchen crews in your methods. Sergeant, select 2 of your men to create a demonstration program. Starting next week, you'll receive visitors from other units. With that, he returns to his jeep and is gone in a cloud of dust, leaving behind a stunned kitchen crew. Holy, Miller breathes once the colonel is out of earshot. Do we just get promoted? More like additional duties, Jenkins mutters, but he's smiling. The sergeant is already tearing into the packet, reviewing the new allocation. His eyebrows rise higher with each page. We're getting double butter rations, he announces, and canned meat. Real canned meat, not that mystery stuff. Extra coffee, too. A cheer goes up from the crew, quickly hushed by the sergeant. Don't get too excited. We've still got lunch to prepare, and now we've got these new techniques to learn. He pulls out a smaller booklet from the packet. Apparently, the food scientists back home have been busy. He hands the booklet to you. You seem smart enough. Study this, then teach the rest of us. The title reads, Advanced Field Preservation and Preparation Techniques, Classified. Over the next hour, as lunch preparations continue around you, you pore over the booklet. It's fascinating stuff. Scientific approaches to food preservation, nutritional calculations, methods for extending shelf life, techniques for maximizing flavor with minimal ingredients. One section particularly catches your eye: emergency substitutions. It lists dozens of creative replacements for standard ingredients: coffee made from acorns, flour extended with ground tree bark, meat substitutes made from mushrooms. It's survival cooking taken to an extreme. Anything useful in there? The sergeant asks, pausing beside you. You look up. It's amazing, Sarge. Some of this stuff is like cooking magic, but some of it, what? Some of it's basically starvation cooking. Like there's a section on how to make bread with sawdust when flour runs out. It works, but it's barely food. The sergeant's face darkens. That's why the colonel was so interested in our methods. Things must be getting worse with the supply chain than they're telling us. He takes the booklet, flips through it quickly, then hands it back. Keep this close. I have a feeling we're going to need it. The afternoon passes in a blur of activity. Lunch is served, a stew made more flavorful by the stock you've been saving, stretched with extra potatoes, but still satisfying. Then it's immediately on to dinner prep and implementing some of the new techniques from the booklet. You show Jenkins and Miller a method for tenderizing tough meat using a brine solution with baking soda. It breaks down the proteins. You explain, reading from the booklet, makes even the toughest cuts edible. Where do they come up with this stuff? Miller asks, watching skeptically as you prepare the brine. Scientists, you reply. Says here, they've got whole laboratories back home just working on how to feed the army better. Seems like they could just send us more food instead of clever ways to make garbage edible, Miller grumbles. Jenkins cuffs him lightly on the back of the head. Use your brain, kid. If they could send more food, they would. This is about making do with what we've got. As evening approaches, you're implementing another new technique, bread fortification. By adding extra protein in the form of powdered milk and a tiny amount of ground peanuts to the dough, you can significantly increase the nutritional value without changing the taste much. The promised supply drop arrives just before dinner, crates of provisions that are quickly unpacked and inventoried. As the sergeant predicted, it's better quality than your usual shipments. Real canned meat, butter, coffee, even a few luxury items like chocolate and canned peaches. Special occasion only, the sergeant says, locking away the chocolate, when the men really need a morale boost. Dinner preparation takes on a festive air with the new supplies. The meatloaf actually contains recognizable meat. The potatoes are mashed with real butter. There's even gravy made from actual drippings rather than just flour and water colored with coffee. As the men file through for dinner, their reaction is immediate. Eyes widen at the sight of the improved food. Comments of appreciation flow freely. One grizzled staff sergeant actually stops to shake your hand. Whatever you boys are doing different, keep it up, he says. Best meal I've had since Paris. That night, as you finally collapse into your cot, exhausted but satisfied, Miller flops down beside you. So, he says, you think we can actually pull this off, teaching other units our methods? You think about the day's events, the inspection, the new techniques, the improved supplies, the satisfied faces of the men at dinner. Yeah, you reply, I think we can. Miller is quiet for a moment. You know what's weird? Before the war, I hated cooking. Couldn't boil water without burning it. Now look at me, practically a chef. You laugh. War does strange things to people. True that, Miller yawns. See you at 0400, cookie. As you drift towards sleep, you replay the day. The science of field cooking, the creativity forced by scarcity, the razor-thin line between nutrition and starvation. Cooking once meant taste and choice. Here, it means survival. Every meal a battle to keep hope and strength alive. Every calorie counts. Every nutrient matters. A man's fighting strength, his very life, depends on what you put in his mess kit. It's a responsibility you never expected to have. But as sleep claims you, you realize it's one you're starting to take pride in. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new improvisations, new lessons in the brutal arithmetic of feeding an army on dwindling supplies. But tonight, at least, sleep claims you, dreamless and deep. A terrifying whistling sound wakes you from your sleep. You sit up abruptly, heart pounding, as the ground shakes with a violent explosion nearby. Dirt and debris rain down on you, and you cover your head with your arms. Son of a, Miller mutters, sitting up and brushing dirt from his hair. They hit the latrine. 3 weeks have passed since the colonel's visit, and the unit has moved deeper into Germany, following the front line as Allied forces press toward Berlin. The relative safety of the rear echelon is gone. Now you're cooking less than a mile from active combat. All clear, the sergeant's voice cuts through the chaos. Back to work. Those potatoes won't peel themselves. You climb out of the foxhole, legs shaky, and stumble back to your station. The massive pot of stew you were stirring has been knocked over by the concussion, its contents spilled across the dirt. The new position has one advantage, a small stream nearby that provides a water source. But it also has a major disadvantage. It's exposed on the eastern side, with only minimal tree cover separating us from potential German observation posts. We'll have to camouflage the smoke, the sergeant says, examining the site. Jenkins, rig up a dispersal system for the chimney. I don't want a column of smoke pointing the krauts right to us. Jenkins nods. He's done this before, creating a system of baffles and covers that spreads the smoke from the cooking fires horizontally rather than letting it rise in a visible column. Dawn breaks as we finish setting up. Everyone is dead on their feet, having been awake for over 24 hours straight. But there's no rest yet. Breakfast still needs to be prepared. Simple meal this morning, the sergeant announces. Oatmeal, coffee, hardtack. That's it. We don't have time for anything fancy. I'm assigned to the coffee, perhaps the most important element of breakfast for men who've been fighting all night. The process is familiar. Fill the massive pot with water from the stream, build a fire in the goulash cannon's firebox, bring the water to a boil. Add the precious coffee grounds, let it brew. As the water heats, we hear a new sound cutting through the morning air, the distinctive crack of a sniper rifle, followed by the ping of a bullet hitting metal nearby. Down! The sergeant roars. Everyone drops to the ground. Another shot rings out, this one striking one of the coffee pots, sending a spray of hot water into the air. They can see us. Jenkins hisses. Told you this position was too exposed. The sergeant crawls toward the nearest truck, keeping his body low. He returns moments later with a field radio. Support coming, he says tersely. Counter-sniper team, but we need to get the camouflage netting up now. For the next 20 minutes, we work in a terrifying game of cat and mouse, staying low, moving in short bursts, helping string camouflage netting over the field kitchen. Every few minutes, the sniper takes another shot, keeping us pinned down, but thankfully not hitting anyone. Finally, a squad from our unit arrives, including 2 snipers with scoped rifles. They immediately take positions at the edge of the clearing, scanning the tree line to the east. Keep cooking, the squad leader tells us. We'll handle the crowd. It's surreal, preparing breakfast while a sniper duel unfolds less than 100 yards away. The sharp crack of rifles punctuates the morning as I stir the oatmeal and salvage what's left of the coffee. My hands shake, but I keep working. The men will be arriving for food soon, hungry after a night of combat. A final shot rings out, followed by a cheer from our unit snipers. Got him, the squad leader reports to the sergeant. We should be clear now, but keep that netting up just in case. Breakfast is served under the camouflage netting, creating a strange, dappled light across the serving area. The men arrive in small groups, dirty and exhausted from overnight operations. Many have the hollow-eyed look of soldiers who've been in constant combat too long. Sorry about the simple breakfast, I say to one particularly gaunt-looking private as I ladle oatmeal into his mess kit. We had to move during the night. Are you kidding? He replies. Hot food is hot food. We've been eating cold K rations for days. By mid-morning, the situation has stabilized somewhat. The immediate threat is gone, but the new reality of our position remains. We're now a forward field kitchen, directly supporting frontline operations. The danger is constant. Get some sleep, the sergeant tells the crew after breakfast is cleaned up. 2-hour shifts. I need everyone fresh for lunch prep. I find a spot under one of the trucks, curl up on my bedroll, and fall into an exhausted sleep almost instantly. It feels like only minutes have passed when Miller shakes me awake. Your shift, he says. Sergeant wants you on bread duty for lunch. Bread is tricky in field conditions. The portable ovens attached to the goulash cannon are temperamental at best, especially with the inconsistent fuel we're forced to use. But bread is also vital, filling, transportable, and a comfort food that reminds men of home. I mix the dough quickly, using the fortification techniques from the special manual. Extra protein from powdered milk, a little vegetable oil for fat, just enough sugar to feed the yeast. I've become expert at knowing the exact consistency by feel, a skill no recipe can teach. While the dough rises, I help prepare the main course, a pasta dish with what the supply officer optimistically labeled meat sauce. The actual meat content is questionable, but with enough tomato paste, herbs, and careful seasoning, it becomes something appealingly food-like. The sound of vehicles approaching interrupts our work. Not the familiar rumble of American trucks, but something different. Everyone freezes. Tigers, Jenkins says, his voice tight. German tanks. The sergeant is already moving. Get to the foxholes now. I abandon the food and run for the nearest foxhole, diving in head first as the first shell whistles overhead. It explodes somewhere behind, the concussion slamming into my back like a giant fist. More shells follow. The Germans can't see us directly, thanks to the camouflage, but they're bracketing the area where they suspect we might be, walking artillery fire across the clearing in a deadly pattern. In the foxhole with me are Miller and a young cook's assistant named Parker, barely 18. Parker's face is white with terror, his body trembling uncontrollably. First time under fire? I ask him, trying to sound calmer than I feel. He nods, unable to speak. Just keep your head down, I say. It'll pass. He holds up his left hand, showing the stumps where his pinky and ring finger should be. You've noticed the missing digits before, but never asked about them. How'd it happen? Spilled boiling water on my glove. Had to take it off to dry. By the time I realized how bad the frostbite was, it was too late. He flexes his remaining fingers. Could have been worse. A cook from another unit lost his whole hand. Grab a metal pot without gloves. Skin stuck to it like touching a frozen pump handle. His matter-of-fact tone chills you more than the falling snow. This isn't just uncomfortable weather. It's potentially lethal. By evening, 3 inches of snow blanket the camp, and the temperature has dropped dramatically. The winterizing is complete. But now you face a new challenge. Dinner preparation in freezing conditions. We're switching to one-pot meals whenever possible, the sergeant announces. Less exposure, less fuel, less chance for things to go wrong. Tonight is stew, heavy on potatoes and whatever vegetables we've got left. The whatever we've got left part is concerning. Supply deliveries have become increasingly sporadic as winter weather affects the roads. Your last proper resupply was over a week ago, and stocks are running dangerously low. Inventory check, the sergeant orders, pointing at you and Miller. I need to know exactly what we've got and how long it will last. The inventory is grim. Flour for maybe 4 more days of bread. Potatoes for 3 days if you stretch them. Coffee, the lifeblood of the army, down to enough for just 2 days. Meat is practically non-existent, just a few cans of mystery protein that might be beef or might be worse. We're going to have to forage, the sergeant says after reviewing your findings. Local farms, abandoned villages, anything we can find. Sir, most of those areas haven't been fully cleared of enemy troops, you remind him. I'm aware of the risk, Private. That's why you'll go with a security detail. First light tomorrow. Dress warm. That night, dinner is a thin stew that barely qualifies as food. Mostly water with chunks of potato, a few withered carrots, and precisely 1 piece of meat per serving. The bread is yesterday's loaves, slightly stale but edible when dipped in the broth. The men don't complain. They've grown accustomed to diminishing rations as winter approaches. They eat quickly, stamping their feet against the cold, then hurry back to whatever shelter they've found or created. Sleep comes fitfully in your freezing tent. The Army-issue sleeping bag is barely adequate, and you find yourself wearing every piece of clothing you own, including your helmet liner as an extra hat. Still, the cold seeps in, keeping you hovering on the edge of sleep without ever fully succumbing. Morning arrives with a temperature well below freezing and another inch of snow. Your breath creates a small cloud inside the tent. Getting out of your sleeping bag requires a level of willpower you didn't know you possessed. Breakfast is coffee, precious coffee that you can't afford to waste but desperately need, and hardtack biscuits spread with a thin layer of margarine. The coffee is half strength, stretched to make the dwindling supply last longer. After breakfast, you report to the sergeant, who introduces you to a stern-faced lieutenant and 3 infantrymen. This is your security detail, The sergeant explains. Lieutenant Harker knows the area. There's a farm about 3 miles east that should still have root vegetables in storage. Maybe livestock if we're lucky. The lieutenant looks you up and down. Ever done this before? Cook? No, sir, you admit. Stay close. Do exactly what I say, and we'll be fine. He checks his watch. We move in 5 minutes. Bring empty sacks, and that cart if it can handle the snow. The cart in question is a small, two-wheeled affair you normally use for transporting food from the kitchen to outlying positions. Its thin wheels aren't ideal for snow, but it's better than carrying everything by hand. The journey is brutally cold. The wind has picked up, driving the snow horizontally into your face despite the scarves wrapped around your head. Your fingers and toes go numb within the first mile, despite the layers of socks and gloves. Germans were through here last week, the lieutenant says as you pass a burned-out Sherman tank half buried in snow. Most pulled back north, but there could be stragglers or patrols. Stay alert. The farm appears after nearly 2 hours of trudging through deepening snow. It's a typical German farmhouse with a large barn and several outbuildings. No smoke rises from the chimney. No tracks for the snow around it. Abandoned, at least temporarily. Anderson, Peters, check the house, the lieutenant orders. Williams, with me on the barn. Cook, stay put until we clear the buildings. You wait, stamping your feet to keep blood flowing, watching your breath form clouds in the frigid air. After 10 tense minutes, the all-clear comes. House is empty, Anderson reports. Looks like the family left in a hurry. Some personal belongings still there. Barn's clear too, the lieutenant adds. And we hit the jackpot. Root cellar under the barn floor, full of potatoes, turnips, carrots, even some preserved meat.